Hi everyone. Good to see you on my channel today. Today I will tell you a wonderful story. It is full of love and kindness. I hope you enjoy it and I wish you an enjoyable viewing experience. Thank you.
Lucy, let's go and live in the city, Harry told the girl. What are we going to do there? She didn't understand. They also lived not in the village, but in a small provincial town. But Harry always wanted to move to a real city where a lot of people live, get a job there, get an apartment, and everything else. How what to do, will work, get married, have children, was the young man optimistic. It's good for you to talk, you have an education. But where am I going to go? She waved her hands. What are you doing? You'll find a job there even without education. He persuaded her. I don't even know. I need to consult with my mom, the girl answered him. Well, tonight and talk to her. He removed a strand of hair from her face. Harry, you're so imaginative. She smiled at him. What am I making up? It's all real. You and I will leave. I'll get a job at the factory. Men say that they give good apartments there. And if there is an apartment, there will be everything else, Harry was sure. Well, okay. I'll talk to my mom and then I'll tell you the answer, she promised him. In the evening, he walked her home. She walked into her apartment. Her mother was sitting at the table in the kitchen. What are you doing up so early today? She asked her. Oh, Mom, Harry, do you know what he's up to? Sat the girl across from her, poured herself some tea, and looked at the woman. What's he up to? She didn't understand. He wants to take me to the city. He says that we'll be better there. Lucy sipped her tea and took a bite of a bun. Well, why don't you agree? He says that there are prospects there, there is more work, and life is better there. The woman was sure of it. But what about you? How can I leave you here? Her daughter asked her. What do you think about me? It will be bad. I'll tell the neighbors. They will call you, assured her mother. Oh, I don't even know. Harry at least has an education. And I have 4 classes of church parish. Always laughed, so Lucy laughed at herself. In fact, she had completed 9 grades. But after them, she did not go anywhere because she was afraid that Harry, someone would take her away. The guy had just gotten out of the army. They became friends, then she got a job at the store, and she stayed there until today. Don't talk too much about yourself. You're doing well, you can read and write. You'll get a job somewhere, and they'll give you some training. In fact, we used to work at the factory. No one had any education. Her mother persuaded her. Late at night, when Lucy went to bed, she thought only about the conversation with Harry and her mother. Why were they so drawn to this town? What was there, honey? She did not understand. And when she met Harry the next day, he was only interested in one question, what her mother had said to the girl. What she said, of course she supported you. It was obvious that from all this story, Lucy was not comfortable. But if her Harry was going, he might not even have to ask her. She would get on and go right after him. So what are you going to tell me? He looked at her. Are you sure you've made up your mind yet? She clarified. There's no such thing as exact, he smiled, because he realized that the girl was already almost agreeing. A week later, a mini send-off was arranged at Harry's apartment. He too lived only with his mother. He already had her quite old, so Lucy's mother came there. Come on, guys, let's make it work. You, Harry, get a job right away, and then you can pull Lucy along with you, her mother said, and everyone was happy that evening because they knew that only good things were ahead. And so, Lucy and Harry got on the train and went to conquer the big cities. They arrived. Since Harry had traveled in advance and got a job at the factory, he was already provided with a dormitory. That's where he and Lucy went. Well, what have we traded our cozy little town for? She asked him. Okay, you don't say anything yet. Now we'll live a little. If we don't like it, we can always pack up and leave, Harry told her. The very next day, he was on his way to work. Yes, although it was an ordinary factory, but the wages here were several times more, and the prospect is also not small. He worked. Lucy stayed at home for the time being. The young man showed himself in all his glory, never late, did everything carefully, he was praised. And after 3 months on the job, Harry approached his foreman. John, wait, he caught up with him. What do you want, Harry? He stopped and waited for him. Couldn't you put my wife in some kind of position? He asked, because Lucy had already pecked his brains out, and it was easier to ask for it. Who is she? The boss was curious. Yes, nobody. She doesn't even have any education. She worked in a store until now, Harry answered. Will she work in the canteen? John asked him. Why, I think she would. Harry realized that if his wife went to work in the canteen, it would not only be a job, salary, and everything else, but also food. The cooks always have leftovers to take home in the evening. Well, then it's agreed. Tell your wife to come tomorrow and write a statement. They shook hands and parted. In the evening, Harry walked home happy. He realized that now he was going to tell his wife the news, and she would definitely be happy about it. On the way, he went to the store, bought something, and decided to get a bottle of wine. He went home and the room was silent. He thought it meant his wife was cooking something in the kitchen. He set the table in the middle of the room, put 2 bottles of wine on it, and waited for Lucy. But she was gone. He wondered where she could be for so long. I went down the hall to see that she was in the kitchen, but she wasn't in the kitchen. Harry, are you looking for Lucy? A neighbor asked him. Yeah, have you seen her? He nodded. Yes, she went to Ariana's in room 95. Knock, they'll open the door for you, she said. Harry did so. He went. Lucy had really gotten to know all the roommates and now went in to see one of them. Ariana was showing her something. Oh, Harry, hi, sorry I'm late, she saw him. No, it's okay, you sit. I just have a surprise for you. He smiled mysteriously. I love surprises. Lucy told him. She got up, said goodbye to her friend, and followed her husband into the room. When she entered, she saw what Harry had prepared here. She smiled. Is that it? She looked at him, laughing. What else do you want? He didn't understand. Sorry, I didn't cook anything today. There's only yesterday's in the fridge. The girl looked guiltily. Well, and all right, take out yesterday's. Today everything didn't matter at all. He filled the flutes, gave one to Lucy in his hand, and took the other one himself. What's the occasion? Lucy asked him. Do you remember that you asked me to talk to my boss about employment? He began. Well, of course I remember. How can I forget if it was a few days ago? She smiled. So today I came up and you're being offered a job out in the canteen. He watched to see what her reaction would be. Harry, that's wonderful. She hugged him. If you accept, you can go out from tomorrow. Take all your documents with you. Write an application. They'll give you certificates. You'll have to pass a medical examination, and you'll work with us, he told her. Yay! She clapped her hands. It felt so good to hear that. She had no idea how happy she would be when she was called to work in the cafeteria. They sat and talked some more tonight, but when it was nearly midnight, Lucy said she had to go to bed. It's work tomorrow after all, she teased Harry. Yes, of course, he didn't argue. While Lucy went to wash the glasses and plates, Harry put the table and everything else in the fridge. The next day, Lucy and Harry walked to the factory. Lucy didn't know why she was so proud, as if she were going to meet an important person, not to work. That's it. Go to the boss, write a statement, take all the papers, and then do whatever they tell you to do. Kiss the husband to his wife. Lucy went. She filled everything out, wrote what she was told. After that, she took a referral and headed to the polyclinic. Not a week later, the girl took all the tests. Everything confirmed that she had everything normal. She went to work in the cafeteria. All right, Harry, let's get on with it, she said. After her first day at the cafeteria, she brought home a lot of provisions. There were cutlets and potatoes and everything else. Yes, I suppose so, he agreed with her. From then on, the husband and wife, who only called themselves that, decided to register the relationship officially. Beloved, I think it's time for you to become a real wife for me. He handed her a ring. I won't refuse. She took it and kissed Harry. When they told their roommates about the wedding, they agreed to celebrate it right here in the dormitory. We should invite our moms, Lucy told her husband to be. Of course, this was out of the question. He thought about it himself. And when the wedding was a few days away, Harry himself drove to his town to bring Lucy's parents here. Her mother came, but Vovina's mother refused for a long time because she was very ill, but Harry managed to persuade her to come. And so, right in the hallway, the women set up the tables, the men helping them with everything. Harry and Lucy went to the registry office, got married and came back. Everyone congratulated them, wished them happiness and all the best. Olen's mother looked at her and was only happy. She gave birth to her daughter late, so she thought she would not live to see this moment. Mommy, why are you sad? Her daughter asked her. No, I'm fine. I'm just happy for you, the woman replied. When a person is happy, he is not sad, said her daughter. Yes, I think whether I will live to see my grandchildren or not, The woman lowered her head. Mom, what are you talking about? Of course you will. Now Harry and I will be given an apartment, and we will definitely take you to us, she promised her. The wedding passed. Husband and wife continued to live in the dormitory, and indeed, 4 years after they had worked at the factory, they were entitled to an apartment. I didn't believe it anymore. Lucy was jumping for joy when she got the warrant. To be honest, I had my doubts too. Harry told her. His mother had died just the year before, and now they wanted to take Lucy's mother in when they got the apartment and did everything else. When they moved into the apartment, it was, of course, just bare walls and nothing else. They had to make repairs and buy furniture. Vov, of course, you may consider me mercantile, but maybe we'll sell your mother's apartment and make repairs with the money. She looked at him. Of course, what's to talk about? If there is an apartment here, why do I need an apartment in another city? He agreed with her. And in the very near future, they did so. When Lucy's mother found out about it, she called her daughter to talk to her. Lucy, if you're really going to take me with you to the city, I want to sell my apartment too, she said to her. Mom, what are you doing? Her daughter didn't understand. Nothing, or are you going to send me back? The woman said with a smirk. Of course, I'm not going to send you back. The daughter didn't understand what she was saying. Well, I'll add you for furniture, repairs, and everything else. I don't want to be a squat, her mother told her. And that was that. Now, when Olin's mom was leaving with them, it turned out that they were saying goodbye to their small town forever. They were not cramped in the apartment. It was big, 3-roomed, and they were renovating it together. Now, while Harry and Lucy were at work, Mom was helping out at home with chores. She cleaned, cooked, did other things. Everything was fine. They were living happily ever after. And then at some point, Lucy felt sick. Lucy, go to the doctor. Her mom told her. Mom, let's wait at least a little bit. If it's just something, the girl did not want to rush the events. No, I said quickly, I feel very bad, and if it will be a grandson, then I will still live, and if not, I do not know whether I'll live long enough or not, said the woman. All right, tomorrow I'll definitely go, promised her daughter. It hurt her when her mother said that. The next day, Lucy excused herself from work, went to the hospital. And yes, just as her mother had predicted, the girl was expecting a baby. I can't believe it's happened, Harry was saying at home that evening when he was told everything. It's no surprise, it happens to everyone. Babies are born after the wedding, laughed Lucy in response. Well, yes, only it's been a while since we were married, her husband replied. It's all right, everything happens. The mother came to them and hugged her children. Lucy's pregnancy was difficult. First, she fell ill with a cold, then she broke her leg and lay down for a long time. What did not happen to her at that moment, but she endured everything, and now she was ready to show her son or daughter to the world, to please her husband and mother. Since the girl was painful, the doctors decided not to take any risks, and in a week and a half Lucy went to the preservation. When the time came to give birth, a boy was born. The girl was happy. Well, mother, we congratulate you, the midwife said to her, and put her boy on her stomach. Hello, Jacob, Lucy said to him and took his little hand. The father, the grandmother, everyone was at the discharge. Everyone had worries now. Lucy doted on her son, just like his father and grandmother. They would do anything for him. Now, while Lucy was on maternity leave, her mother helped her with everything. If one cooked or cleaned the house, the other went outside with a stroller to walk the boy. Everything was so good. Oh, Mom, before, when I was a girl and dreamed of having a family, I could not even think that everything would be like this, Lucy said to the woman. Yes, my daughter, I wish you nothing but happiness. Lately, Mom had given up a lot. She was lying in bed more, but when it was necessary, she got up and did everything that was required of her. Mommy, why don't you go to the hospital? Her daughter used to tell her. Jacob was almost 2 years old by this point and needed to be sent to kindergarten. Olenka, don't worry about me. Just think about yourself, the woman told her. While everything was going well, Jacob was placed in kindergarten. On what day his father took him there, his grandmother did, but only when she could. Everything seemed to really work out. But when Jacob was 5 years old, Lucy came from a walk where she was walking with her son, saw that his mother was lying on the floor. She was very frightened, ran to the neighbors, called an ambulance. When Mom was taken away, she wanted to go with her, but because of Jacob, she couldn't. The neighbor Maria said she'd babysit the boy. You go with your mother, I'll watch him here, she said. Oh, thank you so much, Maria, thanked her. Lucy came with her mother to the hospital. She was very worried about her, but the doctor said that most likely she could not help. And indeed, in a week Lucy remained an orphan. "Darling, don't worry so much, everyone passes away. Your mom lived, she did everything right in her life." Her husband hugged her. "How could it be? Why so early? Why love people go away?" she cried. But life went on. Lucy, too, had already gone to work. Now she and Harry would go to work together again and then come back in the evening, picking up little Jacob from school on the way. "Do you like school?" his father asked him. "Yes, they tell us a lot of interesting things," he replied. Once again, everything went well for them. Jacob did well in elementary school. But when he moved to the senior school, his character changed a lot. Even though Lucy was told it was a transitional age, she couldn't accept it. From a modest, studious boy, he turned into a bully. "Lucy, hello," her class teacher called her. "Good afternoon," the mother sighed, realizing that she was going to complain about her son again. "Your Jacob has done something wrong again," she said. "What is it this time?" the mother asked. She understood that it was a boy, and she understood that they grow up to be bullies, but to do it almost every day, she could not understand. By the time the boy was in 7th grade, he was completely out of control. Lucy cried, asked advice from doctors, from neighbors, from those who have already grown boys, but everyone said different things. One day she was at work when the storekeeper came running to her and started shouting, "Tanya, calm down." She took her by the shoulders. "What's wrong?" "Lucy, Harry's not well." Leslie was almost fainting. "How bad? What happened?" Lucy didn't understand. She wiped her hands on her apron, took it off and ran after the girl. By this time an ambulance had already arrived at the factory and Velodio was taken away. "Where is he?" The girl ran into the shop. "Lucy, we ourselves do not know what happened. He was standing at the machine talking. Everything was normal, and suddenly stopped, settled down, and we immediately called an ambulance." One of the men told her what happened. Lucy immediately ran to her boss, told him what had happened, took a day off work, and went to the hospital. The doctors couldn't tell her anything. Nothing was clear yet. God, well, as it so happens, there was a healthy man, went to work, in the morning got up normal, and now what? Sat and cried, she cried in the hallway. "Here, take it." A nurse came up to her and gave her a glass with something. When the woman started drinking it, she realized it was a sedative. "You won't tell me what's wrong with my husband either." She spoke practically with only one lip. "Lucy, your husband is gone," the nurse told her quietly. "What? This can't be. Harry, Harry." She shouted across the hall. But soon, apparently the sedative had taken effect. She sat down on a couch in the hallway, covered her face with her hands and just cried quietly. She came home. Jacob was already there. She told him everything. "Daddy's dead." He looked at her. "Yes." Lucy nodded her head quietly. But how could? The boy couldn't believe it either. And then there was a funeral, a wake. Some people came, they said something, but Lucy did not understand anything, did not listen to anyone. She did not care, because her most favorite person in the world had gone. After that, she turned into an incomprehensible person. She got up in the morning on automatic, woke Jacob up, sent him to school, and went to work. She was doing something, but she didn't know how or what she was doing, and it was all falling apart. "Jacob, I'm home." She'd come in the evening, but no one answered. Lucy walked through the rooms. No one was home. She didn't know where he was or who he was with. Perhaps it was at that moment that she lost sight of her son. For a whole year, the mother indulged in misery and paid no attention to what her son was doing, where he was going, with whom he was socializing. One day she received a phone call saying that her son had been detained. He had been drinking alcohol with a group of people, and since they were minors, they had to be brought to the police station. Now a specialist in juvenile affairs worked with them, and then there was a commission where Lucy was very ashamed to stand in front of everyone and blush. Only now the woman realized that her son got involved with a bad company. At home she lectured him, but it was all useless. That day, Lucy was standing at the distribution line when a young man approached her. "Can I have some compote?" he asked her. "I already gave you some." Lucy looked at him. "What? You're pathetic. Give me another glass," he asked. "Well, it's not supposed to, okay?" She poured him some compote and gave it to him. After that, when she left the factory to go home, she saw the same man standing near the gatehouse. "Lucy, wait," he shouted to her and went to catch up with her. "Oh, it's you." She looked at him and smiled. "May I walk you out?" He walked beside her. "As you wish," she walked and looked ahead, realizing to herself that she didn't need any other man in her life besides Harry. "My name is Anthony," he told her. "Well, you already know my name," she shrugged. From that moment, every day Anthony came to the canteen or waited for her near the gatehouse, bringing chocolates and candy. "Lucy, look, Anthony's looking at you," the head cook told her once. "Oh, come on, Maria," Lucy waved her away. "Come on, she's still young. Look at him, he's a good guy," she said. Lucy didn't want to look at anyone. Today, she went out a little later than usual, but Anthony hadn't gone anywhere. He was still standing on the street. "I've been waiting for you." He came up to her and handed her some flowers. "Where did you get them?" Lucy looked at the flower beds that were growing here. They were exactly the same flowers. She smiled. "Well, sorry, I wanted to do you a favor," he blushed. "Okay, walking together further." During all the time Anthony had seen her off, and they had talked and met in the dining room, Lucy had gotten used to him. And now that he'd asked her to a movie, she hadn't said no. Yeah, really, he didn't even believe it. "I'm tired of sitting at home. The walls are pressing," she honestly admitted. Today they went to the movies, and tomorrow to walk in the park, and still the same. Every day Anthony brought her some small surprises. "Look, why don't we move in together?" a man asked her one day. She didn't want to traumatize her son anymore. "I'll talk to him. I'll explain everything to him. I'm sure we'll find a common language," Anthony promised her. "Good. Come tomorrow night. I'll introduce you first. Then we'll see what kind of reaction he will have to you. And then we'll see." She invited him to visit. "I will definitely come," he smiled. The next day was a day off, so in the morning Lucy started to cook something. "Is someone coming over?" Jacob asked her when he got to the kitchen. Lucy looked at her son, not sure how to start the conversation. "Who is it?" he wondered. "Yes, but Daddy is long gone. Maybe you can give me a chance at happiness," Mom asked Jacob. "Okay, let him come. Let's see what the pepper is," said Jacob. Then he got dressed and left. In the evening, be home, caught up with his mother in the hallway. When Anthony came home in the evening, it seemed that everything was fine, that he had really hit it off with the boy. Lucy couldn't help but be glad of that. She realized that Jacob was doing different things, probably just from not having a father early on. She wanted to do something to make sure he didn't stay a bully like he was now. Not 2 weeks later, Anthony and Lucy started living together. Even though he had his own place, Lucy insisted that they stay in her apartment. She felt like she belonged here. One day, when Anthony went out with his friends, Lucy decided to go to the closet where her husband's clothes were. She collected all his shirts, pants, socks, sweaters, everything so she wouldn't remember him here in the apartment. Well, and of course he was forever in her heart. The woman parted with all her clothes easily, but only one jacket remained. It was the same jacket he'd been wearing when they'd met. Lucy took it off the rack and held it close to her. She just couldn't part with it. She decided that one jacket in the house wouldn't hurt. Jacob came back from the street smelling of alcohol. "Why are you acting like this?" Anthony asked him in the hallway. "Who are you to tell me what to do?" The young man looked at him. "I live with your mother, so I have something to do with you too," Anthony said sternly. "You're not my father, and you're not going to tell me what to do," Jacob said. "How are you talking to me, you little brat?" Anthony slapped him. "What?" The boy grabbed his cheek. He looked at the man as if he hated him. Lucy wasn't home at that moment, and when she came back, Jacob told her everything. Or maybe you got a case for it. She wasn't on anyone's side, but she knew Anthony never acted like that. When she got to the room and asked the man why he did that, he told her the whole conversation with her son, and she just nodded her head. "Lucy, he needs to be educated," he told her. "Please, Anthony, stay out of it, and I'll handle this." She realized that if this continued, Jacob would hate the man, and then they might be done for. "Okay, I'll try, it's just that he's acting." The roommate stopped talking. When the guy was in 9th grade, he went completely off the rails. He could be rude to his mother, say something to Valerie, for which he repeatedly received slaps and harsh words in his direction. "Why are you living with him? It's me, your son, not him," he always told his mother. "Jacob, stop it please. We have been together for a long time, one family, and there is nothing to show your character here," she used to tell him. "Ah, so. That evening he left the house, slamming the door. Lucy immediately cried, and Anthony quickly got dressed, went outside to find the guy. He found him in a neighboring house in the basement, where he was gathering with a company in which all the guys were older than him. Naturally, on the way out, Anthony couldn't help himself and gave Jacob a couple of good shakes. "Where have you been? Do you know how worried I was?" His mother greeted him at the apartment. "Mom, stop it. I hate you guys. I've gotten together with this one. What's he not doing?" "Yes, I'm younger, I'm weaker, I can't answer him, and he takes advantage of that. And go fight someone who is your equal," yelled Jacob in the hallway. Lucy could see that he was out of it. The next morning the man went to work, and in the evening he did not come home on time. His friends asked him to go out, so he went with them. And the next day he was with his best friend in his garage, and then another, and another, and another. And it went on for over 3 months. "I can't live like this anymore," Lucy told him. "Well, don't live," they argued in the hallway. At that moment, there was a knock on the door. Jacob walked out of school that day as usual. He wanted to go first to the basement where they were going, and then as he went, maybe home, or maybe he would stay there. Naturally, the boys didn't do embroidery there. Some of them bought cigarettes, some of them bought beer, and after school they could sit there and have a good time. Almost everyone except Jacob and his friend Barry was a senior. A lot of them had gone to college after ninth and were there now, but that they were 2-3 years older was a fact. And today, as they sat in the basement, a very mature young man came in there. Yes, he was about 25 years old at the time, but to the guys who were 15-16 years old, it seemed like he was quite a man. "Come here, boys," he called to Jacob and Barry. They came over, and he looked at them carefully, everyone else moving away because they knew what he was going to talk to them about. "Listen, you want to make some money?" he asked them. "What do you have to do?" Jacob asked. Barry looked at his older companions who had left and realized that this was a dirty business. He didn't want to get involved. He had a respectable family, and if he'd been caught with something, his mother and father wouldn't forgive him. "I should probably go," he got up. "Oh, I see was," said the bald man who was talking to them now. Barry left the basement, and Jacob was interested. "So, you want to make some money?" his new acquaintance asked him. "Will you explain what you have to do?" Jacob asked. "I'll give you some bags, and then I'll tell you where to take them. They'll give you money for them, a percentage of which you'll keep, and the rest you'll give to me." The man who had just arrived explained to him. "Isn't it dangerous?" the boy asked him. "Of course it's not dangerous. What are you talking about?" smirked the bald man who sat in front of him. It was a tempting offer for Jacob. He took some packages from Baldy, wrote down what he needed to carry, and had it done the next day. The money was good. It made the guy happy, and now whenever Baldy brought in stuff, he'd take it from him and sell it. "So, how's my courier doing?" Baldy asked when he came to their basement. "Everything's fine," the guy handed him the money. Jacob hadn't planned on going to 10th grade after 9th grade, so now he was at the local high school, where he might or might not go. He could see that his mother and Anthony were getting worse and worse, so he hoped that the man he hated would disappear from his life. Today he sat in his room and waited for the hour to go to those to whom he should deliver the goods. At that moment he heard his mother and her roommate arguing a lot. He looked out into the corridor to see what was going on and heard a knock on the door. His mother opened the door, and the district police officer stood on the threshold. "Hello," he said, "are you Lucy?" "Yes," she nodded her head, wondering why he had come. "I came to talk about your son Jacob," opened a folder, and something was marked there by a man in uniform. "What did he do?" Lucy didn't understand. "We don't know for sure yet, but we need to check and have a preventive conversation," the young man told her. She led him into the kitchen and called Jacob in. They sat there for a long time talking. For some reason, the boy was shaking. "So, Jacob, will you give up your supplier?" the surgeon asked him. "What supplier? I don't know anything." He wouldn't look the lawman in the eye. Yeah, and you don't know anything else either," the surgeon nodded and wrote something down in his folder. At that moment, the door slammed and Anthony left the apartment. They'd had such a big fight today that he didn't want to stay here for a minute. The man at the desk radioed for someone. A few minutes later, 2 more uniformed men entered the apartment, along with 2 neighbors. "So, you are witnesses, and we have a search warrant." He gave the woman a piece of paper. "We wanted to agree with your son amicably, but he does not agree to it." After that, Something unimaginable started happening in the house. They turned everything upside down in the sofas, in the cushions, in the closets, in Jacob's room, but they couldn't find anything. After that, they moved on to the outerwear that was hanging in the closets and in the hallway. Suddenly, one of the employees called out that he had found something. "What have you got there?" The same surgeon who came here first asked him. "Come here, together with everyone else." He was standing in the room with the witnesses, holding several bags with an unknown substance. "Whose jacket is this?" asked the one who found it. "Mine," Lucy said. She was confused, or rather, my husband, my ex-husband. "Jacob, do you have something to do with this jacket?" the young man asked him. No, it has nothing to do with this jacket. It is my dead husband's jacket that I left in his memory. Sometimes, when it's sad in the evening, I just hold him in my arms, remembering the love we had." Lucy began to tell him. "I see, so you're under arrest." The sergeant looked at her. "Arrested for what?" The woman didn't understand. "Do you know what this is?" He showed her what he had in the palm of his hand. "No," she answered. "Okay, we'll sort it out at the station." Lucy was getting dressed now. They were taking her away with them, and Jacob was standing in the corridor. He lowered his head and didn't look towards the door. The woman was brought in, questioned for a long time. Reports were made. There was a suspicion that maybe what they found in her possession belonged to her neighbor, but she also denied it. "Could it have belonged to your son?" the same surgeon who came to their house asked her. "I'm not sure," she replied. "Then you admit it's yours?" The uniformed man stared at her point blank. "I do," she nodded her head. Though Lucy suspected Jacob of it, she couldn't say for sure that it was definitely his. When there was a trial, Jacob was on the witness stand. He was increasingly silent, only shrugging his shoulders. His eyes were downcast to the floor. He couldn't look where his mother sat. The woman had been convicted, given time served, and was being led out of the courtroom. She glanced at Jacob, tried to say something, but he couldn't hear her. The guy still didn't look at the woman. Lucy felt so bad. She didn't think she'd end up here in prison at the age of 45, but she had no other choice. So she kept quiet and tolerated everything that was happening to her right now. After all the procedures she had been through, it was painful, humiliating, and more, but she thought everything would be okay. She didn't despair. Jacob, on the other hand, gathered up all the money at home, all the valuables that were there. He bought a train ticket, got on it, and decided to leave that city. There, in another city, he decided to enroll to study to be a car mechanic. It seemed that neither his mom, nor his stepfather, nor everything that happened now was in his life. He had his own life, which he even seemed to enjoy. Anthony tried to find him, but he was unsuccessful. Jacob decided that he would never go back to his town again. If he had to, he'd go farther away. While he was studying, he lived in some dormitory. Of course, the conditions there were not the same as at home, but that suited him now. "Young man, can you help me?" Once he went to the store, bought something, and on the way out a young girl asked him for help. "Yes, sure. What do you need?" he asked her. "My bag is torn. Could you go to the checkout and buy another one?" She looked at the groceries on the floor. "Now, wait 1 minute." He went and bought a bag, came back. Together they put everything together. "My name is Catherine." She held out her hand. "I'm Jacob. Let me help you carry the bags." He offered her his help. "I'd like that." She smiled at him. They reached the house where Catherine lived and went up to the floor. It turned out that she was also a student and now rents this apartment with her 2 girlfriends. They invited the guy to visit, offered him tea and pies they had made themselves. It was very nice. He stayed with the girls until the evening, and then when he was going home, Catherine went to see him off and offered him to come to them tomorrow. "If you treat the same delicious pies, I will definitely come," he told her. Of course, it would be no trouble at all. She smiled because she liked the young man. The next day, instead of going to school, Jacob went to a store that sold mostly vegetables. He had worked in such a place before, and now he asked for some work to earn some money. They did not refuse him, and in just a few hours he earned enough money to buy a bouquet for Catherine. When he came to them, the girl was overjoyed, and her neighbors, of course, envied her. But Jacob did not have so much money to buy gifts for all 3 of them, so he only waved his hands and apologized to the girls. From that moment on, the boy started coming to his girlfriend's house every day. He brought a bottle or 2 of wine. They set the table, sat together, discussed something, told stories. It was obvious they were interested. Jacob and Catherine had been friends for almost a year. He could stay overnight at her place, and they would go out during the day. Of course, he couldn't invite her to any of the expensive cafes, restaurants, or anything else, but he could just sit on a bench in the park and treat her to ice cream. Jacob's schooling had come to an end. Now he wanted to get a job, looking for a suitable car service, and Catherine began to hint to him that it was time for them to start living together. "But how can you and I start living together if you live with 2 more girlfriends?" he said. If before he came to them, the 4 of them were interesting, but now, when he and the girl started a relationship, he was just annoyed by the presence of her friends. "Well, what am I going to tell them, everyone? Jacob and I are staying here and you're leaving." She didn't understand. "Well, why not? They can live in the dorms," the guy told her. "No, I can't do that." She was against it. "Do you want me to tell them that?" He offered to tell her. "Well, you realize that it would not be fair to them." Catherine could never afford it at all. She and these girls came from the same village, all this time lived together, studied, did everything together. And if she said that to them now, she'd just be betraying them. But Jacob didn't seem to care. One day, when he came to Catherine's house and decided to stay with her in the evening, he told the other 2 girls directly that they wanted to live together, and without them if possible. "Catherine, what is he saying?" the girls almost said together. "Girls, excuse me, but this is Jacob's idea. I'm ashamed." She lowered her eyes. "Yeah, a friend, I'd be embarrassed too." They started packing to move. "Girls, please don't be offended." Katerina came out into the corridor to see them off. "Come on, we'll live in the dorm," they told her and left. "What did you do?" She came to the room. "Why, you see how easy it all turned out," he smiled. "Do you realize that these girls are almost my sisters, and now, how will I look them in the eyes?" Almost cried Catherine. "Normal, you will look them in the eyes." He thought about something, went to the window. After that, they began their life together. Catherine studied. Jacob got a job, as he wanted in a car repair shop. He didn't succeed, but he got a job at a service station. The money was not much, but it was enough to pay the rent and buy something. Money started coming in. New friends started coming in. "What, Jacob? Are you with us today?" The guys at work asked him. "I don't know, I'm waiting for me at home," he told them in the same language as they did to him. "So what, you're a pimp?" They didn't understand. No, of course not. Jacob couldn't stand being told that. "That's it, we don't have to ask anyone anything. We just go to the pub and that's it." His colleagues laughed at him. Then he came home for the first time almost in the morning, very drunk. "Where have you been?" "I haven't slept all night." Catherine greeted him. "Darling, do not worry, everything is fine," he told her. Catherine saw that he could hardly stand on his feet. After that, Jacob went into the room. He just fell on the couch and fell asleep without even undressing. She didn't know what to do. She just loved this man and that's all. And he kept going out, with his friends, with someone else. "Catherine, will you marry me?" He came home from work and he was a little drunk, but not as usual lately. "Is that how you propose now?" She smiled. Yes, he nodded, and Catherine realized that her man leads not quite the right way of life, but like many young girls, she thought that now they will get married, and she will definitely fix everything. Understandably, Catherine smiled. "So what's your answer?" He stood there smiling. "And where is the ring?" she asked. "The ring will be, but later," he promised her. "Okay, I agree. Go to bed. Tomorrow morning we'll talk sober," she told him. And then she and the girls in the dormitory discussed what and how she wanted to do. Katerina wanted everything to be human. "Kaya, why do you need him?" Her friends told her. "You understand, I love him." She looked at them. "No, we do not understand. You look at him. He will also throw you out of the house, as we once did. No doubt about it, girls." After that, when Catherine went to her parents' house for the weekend, she took Jacob with her. He had never been to her village before. His father and mother welcomed him well, fed, watered, and blessed him. "Well, daughter, I can only wish you happiness," her mother told her. Jacob was always good-looking, and no one would ever think he was doing anything wrong or worse. "You know what?" Father got up from the table. "Let's come to the village and have the wedding here." "Why, it's an idea." Catherine supported him. "Of course, if you have a wedding in the village, everything is yours. We'll set the tables. You only have to wear a dress and a suit," her mother said. Jacob sat silent most of the time. Yes, he liked Catherine. Yes, he wanted to be with her, but he wanted to have a big wedding, invite all his friends, drink with them all. But now the young man realized that he could not do it. In the first place, there is no money, and in the second, and he did not even know what in the second. Okay, I agree, he said, when he saw that everyone looked at him with a questioning look. And after that, it was on. When all the girls found out that the girlfriend would be getting married in their home village, they started the preparations. The dress was rented, the groom's suit too. Mother and her girlfriends in the village prepared various dishes, even found a woman who agreed to be a toastmaster at this wedding. Jacob and Catherine arrived the day before the wedding. Today they have already gone to the registry office, signed. It remains only to celebrate everything. The young man told his friends, who could support him, to come to the village, but they refused, so there was no one from the groom's side. And where have you got everything? Katerina's father wondered. It is better not to ask. There is no one. Wrinkled his forehead and withdrew the guy. At that moment he remembered his mother. It was shameful, unpleasant, bitter in the depths of his soul, but he again drank a couple of shots. After that it was easier. The wedding was merry, and the whole village was having fun, dancing, and only the groom sat and poured one after another. Look, mother, our son-in-law is a lover of this business. Catherine's father pointed at the groom. Oh, come on, remember yourself, was the saying. Wait that. When they returned home, everything was the same as it had been before. Jacob could stay late at work. And when 2 years passed, she graduated from the institute, she had to get a job. She realized that she couldn't build a personal life with this man. He has on his mind only partying, drinking, friends. She is home alone all the time. And Catherine made a strong-willed decision that they need to part. One day she came home with the serious intention of telling Jacob that they should probably break up. He wasn't home, and when he came home, he was still in the same state as usual. You again, I told you to at least come home sober tonight. I have a serious conversation to have with you, she yelled at him. Speak, I'm listening to you, he answered her calmly. No, we can't live like this anymore. We're getting a divorce, she told him. What's gotten into you? Everything was normal. He didn't understand. She threw his things in her bag because she didn't want to see her husband here anymore. She thought that now she would cut the knot and everything would be fine. But she only thought so because when the decision was already made, she felt that she felt bad. In her heart, she was happy about it. But in fact, the baby was now completely out of time. To be sure, Katerina went to the pharmacy and bought a test, and he confirmed her suspicions. The girl returned home. She was crying. What's wrong with you? Jacob was home. I'm expecting a baby, she told him, and she looked up with tears in her eyes. You wanted to get pregnant, didn't you? Why are you crying now? He hadn't left for work yet, so he was fine. Yes, I wanted to, but you were normal then, and now, look at our life. You're drunk all the time, you don't understand anything. I have to put up with all this, your friends, your drinking, and everything else. She shouted and sobbed during this. When Catherine told about all this to her mother, she pressed her hand to her chest, sat and quietly said that she did not think of anything bad. My dear, everything will be resolved. Your father also liked to go out and drink with men to go. I used to wait for him. He'd come back from the field only after midnight. You could say that I alone brought you up. All the children, my mother cried when she remembered it. The girl listened to her mom. She'd been going all through her pregnancy. She'd seen that Jacob had stopped coming home drunk. Yes, he was a little inadequate, but she thought that was just the way it was, due to his temper. Catherine gave birth. Jacob came to the discharge. His mother and father came from the village. It seemed like everything should be normal by now. But one night Jacob began to feel sick. He began to choke, grabbing his throat, his heart. The wife had no choice but to call an ambulance. When the paramedics arrived, they took him to the hospital. Ekaterina could not go with them because she had a small child in her arms. She called the next day. Tell me, what's wrong with my husband? She asked the doctor. He was heavily drugged. That's what caused the poisoning, the doctor told her. Narcotic? She asked him again. Yes, did you know? The doctor asked her. No, she didn't listen further, just hung up. When Jacob came home, the doctors told him not to take anything. He couldn't have anything. The wife was freaking out. She couldn't believe her husband would do such a thing. Catherine, can I at least have a drink? I'm very sick, he said when 3 weeks had passed since the hospital. She herself saw how he was suffering, but with her own hands could not ruin him. No, the doctors told you not to, she said. When he started to go somewhere, she was afraid he might start doing it all over again. So she took a bottle out of the refrigerator, set it on the table. "Here, you go ahead and drink," she let him, realizing that he could get very sick now. A shot, a second, a third, Jacob began to say something. Catherine heard him say something about his mother. She quickly put the child to bed and went to him. "What are you talking about?" she asked him. "Do you know how guilty I am about my life?" He lowered his head. "No, I don't know." She sometimes asked him about his parents, but since he never said anything, she didn't insist on answering. "My mother was in jail for me," he told her in a slurred voice. "Are you crazy again?" his wife asked him. "Nothing, I have not gone. I am so guilty in front of her. All my life I think about it," he said something else. But Catherine did not listen to him because she thought that this drunken delirium. And at night, as she expected, he had a seizure. She called an ambulance, and now the doctor said that he needed to go to a specialized clinic because they could not help. The girl was fine with that, and that's where Jacob was placed. He cried, begging for her to take him home when he woke up the next day. But as much as she felt sorry for him, she left him there because she wanted him to heal. A few months in the clinic had naturally gone well for Jacob. He felt better now than he ever had before. When he got home, his wife didn't recognize him. "Why are you looking at me like that?" he asked her. "Tell me, is what you said about your mother true?" She decided to talk to him about it. "What did I say?" He couldn't remember anything. "Well, that your mother was in jail because of you," Catherine began to remind him. "Shit, I told you about that too. I never wanted to talk about it. That's why I left my town, to never go back there again." He again did not look into his wife's eyes. "Tell me," she asked him. Yes, there was nothing to tell. It was a very bad story. He lowered his head again, because even his wife was ashamed to look him in the eye when he remembered it. "Well, and now where is she, your mother?" Catherine asked him. "I do not know. Probably lives in the city," he told her. "According to his calculations, a year or two ago, she should have been released." "Why don't you go to her?" She pestered him with questions. "Katya, please leave me alone. I don't want to talk about it and I won't." He got up and went to his room. She could see that he was nervous again, so she stopped all the questions so that he wouldn't do anything wrong again. But apparently Jacob had been so reformed at the clinic that he didn't want to do anything now. He quit where he worked before, not without Catherine's help, and got a good job. Now life seemed to be getting better. "What? I don't know. Remember, you came here, we rented this apartment, you stayed here, and then, how much I did for you. I pulled you out. You would have drunk or become a drug addict. But no, I ran after you. I walked, I gave birth to your son, and you still can't help it." She began to give him some arguments. All right, I'll go, but don't yell. All right, calm down. I'll do everything myself," Jacob promised his wife. And in a couple of days, he packed his bags, took all the documents, bought tickets, and went to the city, where he had not been for a very long time. It was time on the train, and he almost went crazy, because in his head, there were only thoughts about his mother and his act. At first, Jacob wanted to go to Aunt Veronica's house, ask her all the details, then go to his mother's apartment, but he realized there was no way he could get there. So, in order to find out all the details of the situation, he went straight to the notary. He thought that maybe he would explain to him how all these procedures take place. For some reason, the guy thought that the notary in their neighborhood must know something. So he went there, but there was a long line. He had to wait. So he just made an appointment and left the office. Jacob wandered around the city today, remembering how he'd been at this school, how he and his boys had run through this park, passing familiar places, and he was overcome with shame and nothing else. Finally, it was time for his appointment. He went back in. "I made an appointment for 2 o'clock this afternoon," he said to the young girl who was sitting in the waiting room. Yes, come in. They're waiting for you," she showed him to the door. Lucy, when she got to the prison, felt very bad. Not only was the environment unfamiliar to her, but everything that was done there was also unacceptable to her. At first, she was squeamish about everything. She didn't want to eat anything, but her neighbors told her that she wouldn't last long like that and she had to eat. In time, the woman got used to it, as her new friends like to say, that a man is such a creature. After a while, he gets used to everything. But that was not all the problems Lucy faced here. Not 6 months later, she began to get very sick. She had asthma when she was a child, and now it was getting worse, and other ailments were coming out. "Maybe we should call a doctor," one of the women said. They did so, and that was the first time Lucy had been to the health center. "Hello, do you need anything?" A young girl came up to her. "Oh, if you could give me some painkillers," Lucy asked. "Yes, of course. Now, I'll just consult." The girl left the place where the newly arrived patient was lying. She was gone for a long time, then she came back and gave me some pills. "Thank you," the woman thanked her. "Everything will be fine. Don't worry," the girl told her. Lucy tried to smile a little. "You lie down, lie down." She tried to adjust her pillow and blanket. "Cindy, what are you doing there again? Stop helping them. They can do without you." Lucy heard the angry voice of the medic. "Aunt Selina, well, you can't be such an evil person. You should always help people," the young girl said in response. "And they were kind when they got here. You don't know what she did. Maybe she killed her husband or a neighbor out of jealousy, and now we have to help them." The woman stood in the doorway and waited for Cindy to leave the room. Cindy didn't know why she felt so sorry for the woman. She had been here before, but no one had ever treated her kindly. They all tried to poke her, to point out something. Now she didn't even know what was going on. Cindy realized that after the pill Lucy should get some sleep, she left her, and then she was going to visit her again. "Aunt Selina, will you let me walk this sick person?" asked the girl to her relative. "Oh, Cindy, you can't work here. You're so compassionate." She shook her head. "Maybe I don't want to work here," she countered. "All right, take care of her, and don't forget about the others, mopping the floors, taking the ducks out, washing sheets, duvet covers, diapers. Everything is on you," Salima said sternly. "I know all this." The girl calmly took this information. She came, looked into the room, saw that Lucy was awake, smiled, went inside. "Excuse me, may I come in?" She asked permission. Only when the woman nodded did she enter. "Why do you ask? I'm nobody here. You're the owners." Cindy again at that moment fixed the bed, then sat down beside her, offered to read. "What are you going to read?" Lucy asked her. "Would it make any difference to you?" smiled Cindy. "Of course it doesn't make much difference, but it's interesting." Lucy remembered that she used to love to read. Whenever she had a spare moment, she would pick up a book or a magazine. "I saw a detective story lying here, so I took it and regretted that I hadn't taken any books with me," she said sadly. At that moment, Lucy coughed so hard that she began to choke. Cindy immediately snapped out of her seat. She gave her something to spray in her mouth and then turned on the inhaler. "Take your time, breathe easy. You'll feel better now," she told the woman carefully. When Lucy did the inhalation, she did feel a little better. After that, Cindy put her back to bed. Then the girl sat down on a chair and started reading the book. "Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt you." Lucy looked at her. "Yeah, what did you want?" Cindy didn't understand why this woman evoked so much emotion in her. "Tell me, how did you get here? I can see that you don't really want to work," the woman asked her. "Yeah, like everybody," Cindy said sadly. "No, everybody doesn't go to jail for nothing," Lucy said. Her chest was really burning. It was hard to breathe. But she wanted to know about this girl. "I lived with my mother, nothing special. Life was like everyone else's, school, dreams, girlfriends, and then everything fell apart at once." Cindy began to tell her. "Something happened?" Lucy guessed. "Yes, one day my mother went to work and never came back," she said quietly. "Where did she work?" the sick woman asked her. "At the factory, like many people these days." Cindy closed the book and now looked at a single point somewhere on the wall. It was very painful to think about. "What did she work there?" Lucy began to remember how she and her husband used to go to the factory together and then back. Her eyes filled with tears. She couldn't hold back a sob. "What's the matter with you? You mustn't worry." Cindy noticed and immediately thought that she had touched the woman, and that could have been detrimental to her well-being. "No, I'm fine. I just remembered I used to work in a factory. My husband and I used to work there together, and then he..." Lucy sighed. It was very hard for her to talk about it. "My mother worked on a crane. I don't know what happened there, but there was a problem with the crane and my mother fell right off the top." Cindy sobbed. She tried not to show it, so they wouldn't cry together. "What a nightmare." The woman put her hand to her chest. She remembered the moment when they came to her and told her that her husband was bad, and then the hospital, and then everything. There was nothing further. That was the end of her life. "I see you had something to do with the plant?" Cindy asked her. They had such a trusting dialogue that it was impossible not to respond to it all. "Yes," the one in the bed nodded, but she didn't want to say it out loud yet. And after that, they wanted to put me in an orphanage, but my aunt came to the funeral and said she was taking me with her. I finished school for a while, and after that she took me here. Cindy looked nowhere again. Wow, that's quite a story. Lucy shook her head. You know, I used to dream that I'd meet a decent man, marry him, and before that I'd finish my studies at some institute or college. We'd live, work, have kids. But she stopped talking, and it seemed to Lucy that the girl was going to cry. Well, don't be upset. Everything happens in life, and you should dream too. Dreams must come true. The woman stretched out her hands to her. Thank you for your support, the girl responded to her embrace. Although it was late, but they talked about everything and nothing. Auntie, you know how strict she is. She forbids me to do anything. I'm like a slave here. I wash, clean, take out, serve, do something else. It is you who came here, so all decent, talking normally, and others, you know, as they say, in an orderly tone. The girl was silent again. Don't listen to anyone. Be yourself. Look how kind you are, how much inner beauty is in you. Lucy put her hand on the girl's knee. Oh well, I'll go, I have so much to do. Cindy got up from her chair. Come on in, don't forget, Lucy said to her. How could I forget you? I'll take care of you. She smiled a beautiful smile. Cindy left, and the woman closed her eyes. Right now, she just wanted to go to sleep and never wake up again. It was all so tiresome, and she did fall asleep. In the morning, she was awakened by the clanking of iron. She opened her eyes and saw that it was Cindy moving the ducks across the floor to clean there. Good morning, the girl told her. Morning, if it could be called that, Lucy echoed. Then there were some IVs, shots, pills, but the woman wasn't getting any better. She coughed so much, she felt like she was going to spit out her lungs. Every day the girl, when she had free time, came to see her. She would bring her something to eat and some sweet tea, which she missed very much. Then she would sit on a chair and start reading. The woman listened to this girl, and every time she wanted to cry. She imagined that her child could be just like that, and at that moment, the woman cried. Jacob had not come to her once, not a letter, not a message, nothing. It was very upsetting. I see you're having a hard time too. Cindy guessed why the woman was crying. Yes, I think everyone has some troubles in life, but sometimes she stopped talking because she really didn't want to talk about anything like that. Why don't you want to talk about it? Cindy asked her. Lucy was so intrigued that it was impossible not to ask. Because if I tell you now, it will all come back to my memory and I'll have to relive something that's long gone. Lucy turned away from the wall. She didn't want to look at the girl. She had so many contradictory feelings about her. At the same time, she wanted to share everything with her, and at the same time not to say anything. All right, you can tell her when you want to, Cindy told her, got up and left the room. Lucy lay there thinking, tell it or don't tell it, it's always in your head and you never forget it. For some reason, she remembered Valera now. How good he was. He was courting, saying beautiful words, asking her out on dates, taking her to the movies. And now, where is he? Why is she here alone? She feels so bad. He said he loved her. Lucy closed her eyes. She remembered her family when she still had her mom, Harry, and little Jacob. And again, Jacob. She realized that she was being put on the simplest of medications, and her illness wasn't that simple. This girl she met here reminded her a lot of herself. She was just as young and foolish. Now Lucy lay there thinking that if she got out of prison alive, she would do anything to help this girl. Lucy spent some more time here. Cindy stayed with her, doing everything she could to ease her suffering, but she couldn't stay here all the time, and at one point Cindy came into the room and didn't sit down on a chair like she usually did. Is something wrong? The woman guessed. Yes, you are being discharged today, but don't think I won't forget you. The girl smiled. Oh, you are so good. It will be hard for you in life. The woman touched her hand and smiled. Thank you for your kindness. Cindy couldn't help but hug her. You know what they say, what goes around comes around. You do me good, and I'll do you the same. They hugged goodbye. Lucy was transferred back to where she was serving her sentence. But not 2 months later, the woman was back here in the infirmary. Oh, you're in very poor health. Cindy was glad to see them again, but she was worried about her new friend. I knew it myself. The woman felt something going on inside her. Together with Cindy, They began writing letters of appeal saying that she was very sick, that she would definitely get worse here. Cindy tried to do everything she could for this woman to be released. And now, after 3 years, they finally got a favorable decision. "Lucy, I'm here to see you dance." With happy news, Cindy ran into the room where the woman now spent almost all her time. "If I could, I would have danced." The woman smiled sadly. "Would you like to see what we got back?" Cindy waved the envelope in front of the woman's face. "Well, talk already." The woman caught hard again. "You are released on parole." Cindy waved the empty envelope again. "My God, my girl," Lucy cried. She couldn't believe that everything had really worked out. "I'm happy with you too, even though I don't want to part with you." Tears were running down her cheeks. She had only 2 days to wait, and she would be free. Lucy did not even believe it, but everything turned out to be true. And so they walked to the gate, Cindy walking her out. "Look," the woman turned to her. "Yes," she said, and she turned to listen. "Why don't you come with me?" the woman suggested to the young woman who had become her closest friend. "How could I? We are complete strangers." "Yes, here, in a closed space we communicated with you. But there you probably have children, neighbors, friends. What would they say?" Cindy couldn't accept such a gift. "Come on, no kids, no friends. Have you seen how long I've been here? Has anyone come to see me?" Lucy coughed up hard again. "I don't even know." Cindy realized that this was her chance to make her way in life, but at the same time, she couldn't take advantage of the woman's kindness. "No, I don't know. I'm going home now." And here, she handed her a piece of paper with her address written on it. "Settle your affairs here, with your aunt, with your job, and then come see me. I've got a big apartment, we'll fit in together." Lucy was telling it like that on purpose to make Cindy want to go to her place even more. "Okay, but I promise you that I'll stay at your place for the first time, and when I've done well, I'll get an apartment and move out." She took Lucy's hands in hers, and then they hugged. After that, the ex-convict walked out of the gate, got on the bus, and drove off. She looked out the window at the road, at the fields, at the forest that flashed past, and thought, and why she was coming back now, who needed her there? But if the girl came to live with her, they would do well and everything would work out. She saw her house from afar. Immediately, something inside her felt nostalgic. She walked down the road and cried. When she came to the entrance, saw her neighbors, who were sitting on a bench near it, she smiled. "Oh, Lucy, is that you?" Veronica, her neighbor, jumped up. "Yes, have I changed?" The woman wondered. No, she was confused and just didn't know what to say next. In fact, Lucy over the years has lost a lot of weight. It seemed that the skin just tightened the bones. Her face was blackened in some places. She looked like an ancient old woman in her years. "Yes, I know what has changed myself. Prison, brings nothing good to a person's life," Lucy said sadly. She went on toward the door. Then she went up to her floor, opened the apartment door, and the first thing she saw was the jacket. Volodia's jacket, which had been left hanging there the last time they found something in it. "Hello, my love." She pressed the jacket to her again, as she had done so many times in her life. Then Lucy went through the rooms. Everything was dusty. The plants that stood on the windows had long since wilted. "Okay, gotta do some cleaning," she told herself in the mirror to cheer herself up. Afterward, she changed her clothes, armed herself with gloves, buckets, and rags, and began the task in the rooms. Yes, it wasn't as easy for her now as it had been before. Her cough was choking her, her joints ached. In an hour, she couldn't do anything. She was so tired that she had to howl like a wolf. Not a month and a half later, the doorbell rang. Lucy knew who it was. No one else could come but her neighbor, but Cindy could still come. She opened the door and saw the girl. "Nadia, you made it." She hugged her. "Of course, I couldn't miss such a chance." The girl shamefully lowered her eyes down. "And there's nothing to be ashamed of. Everything is fine. Look at my apartment. Come in, you'll have your own room. If you need it, I won't disturb you." The woman led her into the apartment, and when Cindy took off her shoes, led her further. "Here I have the kitchen, bath, toilet. Here is the hall. Here is my room. And this will be your room," Lucy told her. She was so glad the girl had come to her. Then they set a modest table and sat down at it. "And who is that in your picture?" Cindy saw a small card that was tucked behind the glass in the sideboard. "That's my son, Jacob," the woman said sadly, tears once again streaming down her cheeks. "Where is he now?" Cindy was afraid to ask that question because she was afraid he was dead or something had happened to him. How should I know? Lucy shrugged. It's strange, usually children are very affectionate to their mothers, especially boys, Cindy wondered. Usually, yes, unusually, the woman shook her head. Tell me about him, Cindy asked cautiously. What's to tell? He was a nice guy, then his father died and it started. Bad company, alcohol, cigarettes. I met a man, and I thought he would teach him about life, but he could only solve problems with his fists, and Jacob didn't like that. She stopped talking, not wanting to talk about anything else. Okay, I'm not going to ask you anything else. I apologize for my curiosity. Cindy took the woman's hands in hers. It's okay, daughter, she told her. You know, the first time I saw you, you really reminded me of my mom, not in appearance, but in the way you spoke to me. You have a kindness about you. The guest said quietly. Come on, let me show you where everything is, and you can begin to settle in. They went to the room that was to become Nadine room. Lucy showed her everything, told her everything, and now went to the kitchen to do her chores. I'm going to apply tomorrow. Will you be holding fists for me? Asked Cindy when she came out to the kitchen in the evening. You're still asking, of course. Lucy smiled at her. At night when they went to bed, Cindy heard a muffled whistling sound somewhere in the apartment. She knew roughly what it was, but went over to make sure. The landlady was lying in her bed, and when she breathed, the whistling sound came from her chest. She realized that Lucy urgently needed to go to the hospital, but no matter how many times she told her so, the woman kept refusing. Good morning. She walked into the kitchen when her hostess had already made cheesecakes, brewed tea, and was waiting for her at the table. Good morning, Lucy smiled at her. She took a seat at the table and Cindy followed suit. Can I ask you something else? The girl looked into her hostess's eyes. Of course you can ask anything you want. She didn't mind that there was some trust between them. Let's make a deal. If I submit my documents today and get admitted, you promise me that you will go to the hospital. The girl didn't know how to make her go there. Okay, the woman nodded and smiled. That's it. Then you and I have a deal. And if you cheat me, then, she wagged her finger at her. The main thing is that you get in. Everything else doesn't matter anymore. Lucy cheered for the girl. She thought if things didn't work out in her life, she would do everything she could to make this girl happy. Cindy arrived in the evening. She had applied. Her grade point average was passing, but she needed to study for the entrance exams. There was no taking away from the girl's work ethic. Whatever she did around the house, cooking, cleaning, grocery shopping, she relieved Lucy of all the chores around the house. My God, where did you come from? The landlady couldn't get enough of her. It was your kindness that drew me here, Cindy told her honestly. After that, when the entrance exams were over, Cindy went to the institute in the morning, and Lucy lit a candle, took out an icon, and until her lodger came home, she just sat and prayed for her. Well, now it's your turn, the future student smiled. Yes, did you really pass? It was such a joy to know that at least someone in life is realizing their dreams. Don't walk away from the answer. Remember what you promised me. If I get in, you'll go to the hospital, Cindy told her quietly. Yes, of course I remember everything. Lucy didn't look at her. And what? So tomorrow morning you and I are going to pack up together and go to the doctor's office? Cindy didn't look away. Sweetheart, you know, the landlady wanted to say something. I don't want to hear anything. Cindy put her hands out in front of her. She went to her room and started packing up Lucy's things. She had to remember not to forget anything. All the cards, statements, all of it was already in her bag, and the woman was still sitting in her room on the couch. Okay, let's get up. She took the woman under her elbow. Okay, let's go. Lucy stood up, starting to get dressed. She hadn't liked going to doctors since she was a little girl, and now she herself realized that there was something wrong with her. She didn't want anyone messing with her body. Let things go as they were, but since she promised, she had to go. They arrived at the hospital complex, went in. Cindy found the right office, took the woman there. When they entered the office, the doctor looked at them both like this. Is something wrong? Cindy asked him. Of course not. Where have you been up to now? He was looking at the woman's files. Where we were, we're not, Lucy quipped. I see, if we're joking, it's not so bad. The man looked up at her and smiled. This way he somehow made the woman feel at ease. Then the doctor listened to the woman, ordered a bunch of tests, as well as a fluoroscopy and an ultrasound. Cindy stood by her charge. she wasn't going to give up to any obstacles. The girl now imagined that this was really her mother and she needed help and support. Today they had only managed to pass a fraction of what the doctor had ordered, which meant that they would have to come here again tomorrow. There it was the big deal, the girl told her on the road as they drove back. She wanted to stop somewhere and buy a cake so she could sit in the kitchen in the evening and talk like they'd like to do. The apartment was cozy after Cindy had cleaned it up and rearranged some things there. They separated into rooms for a while and then came together as they had intended. "So, have you gotten over our trip?" smiled Cindy. "It's okay, I didn't want to tell Lucy that. She believed that as long as you kept quiet about something, it wouldn't happen." "Okay, let's drink tea." The girl put the cake on the table, poured tea into mugs, put saucers. "Thank you for everything," the woman told her for the umpteenth time. "Stop praising and thanking me, you're doing the same thing." Cindy didn't want to hear it. "Okay, I won't," Lucy grinned. She knew the girl didn't even realize how much she was helping her. If she came here alone now, what was she to do? Just sit out in the apartment and that was it. At the very least, she talked to the neighbors, that's all. But now. "And tell me about your first husband. I take it you had a great love affair." Cindy asked to change the subject. "Oh, Harry," sighed the woman. In her mind, she was immediately transported back many years ago when she was a young girl coming out of school and he had just arrived home. The guy was walking down the road, all handsome, in uniform, and Lucy realized she was missing. "And I dream of such a great love. I don't know if it's possible to meet such a person," Cindy sighed in response. "You know, it's all about realizing if you're right for him or not. Sometimes you meet him and you think you're in love. And then a year, 2 years go by, and that's it. You get bored, you start to have some complaints. It means that you found the wrong man," smiled Lucy sadly. "And Anthony, I heard you say that name too, when you told me about him." Cindy took Lucy away from sad thoughts with all this talk. "And what about Anthony? He came and talked about how much he loved her, and when he had his first difficulty, he went straight into the bushes." The woman smirked. Did she have no feelings for him at all? She wondered. "No, I thought he'd teach Jacob to be smart. But no, he only got blows from him," Lucy said sadly. "I'm not going to ask you anything about your son, because I can see how sad it makes you," Cindy said honestly. After that they said goodnight to each other and went to their rooms. Tonight Cindy dreamed that young Lucy and her beloved Harry were walking happily down the street, with Jacob holding hands between them. All three of them happy. In the morning, the girl woke up in a good mood from such a dream. She knocked on Lucy's door, went in, and again talked her into going to the hospital. And again the cab, and the hospital corridors. "Well, that's it, I think we're all done." The girl looked at the paperwork. "Thank God," exhaled Lucy with a whistle. "Cindy, can you and you, while you waited the corridor," came out of his office the doctor, after he was given the results of all the tests. "Yes, of course." She stood up, gave Lucy a stern look, and went into the office. The woman stayed in the corridor. She understood that when a patient is not invited to the office, it means they want to say something bad. "Doctor, I'm listening to you." The girl sat down on a chair. "Everything is very sad," he told her. "I guessed, but what can be done?" The visitor asked hopefully. "I think that nothing can be done. She has lung cancer, and metastasis has spread everywhere. You did not look at the papers, it was already clear." "How can it be? What then?" Her eyes were wet. The girl couldn't even speak. "Look, I could appoint an operation, but believe me, it will be useless, and not the fact that the heart will withstand anesthesia." The doctor did not want to hide anything from the girl. "Well, if it's different, what are the prospects?" Cindy was ready for any verdict. "So, to summarize, let me put it to you this way. If we put Lucy in for surgery, she'll have no more than a year to live. We'll just make sure of what I've told you. If we refuse the surgery, yes, she will be sick, but she could last 3 years." Now the doctor looked at Cindy and waited to see what she would say. "If the end result is the same, then we choose the second one. It's better to be here for 3 years than to just go under the knife and die." She wasn't crying anymore either. She realized that it was real, and she just had to accept it. "Okay." The doctor handed the girl all the documents. She said goodbye and left the office. "What when I die?" asked Lucy as she walked out of the office. "Don't even think about it." The girl smiled at her. They were home again. Cindy never left Lucy alone for a moment now. She was always up to something. They went to museums, the theater, the movies. Once she got her favorite movie with Harry, and then she had a movie night. Why don't we call Aunt Veronica and have a party? The girl suggested it. Then Maria should come too. Lucy brightened up. Perhaps it was already very painful and bad, but she did not show it and chortled. But not 6 months later, Lucy went sick. But even then, Cindy was always there for her. My darling, one day Lucy called Cindy into her room. She got up, but she didn't get up very often, so the girl didn't say anything to her about it. Yes, she came running. Can you fulfill my request? The woman asked seriously. Of course, the woman nodded. Then please call the notary at home, Lucy asked. Why do you need him all of a sudden? The girl asked. Less questions, more business, or we won't have time. The woman didn't rely on her body. Cindy, of course, called the notary. They made an appointment, and then she went back to Lucy's room. So still, answer me this question. What do you want from this man? She asked again. Look, what do you want? Do you want this apartment to go to my son? Where was he when I was in prison? Helping? No. And who was helping me? You? Where was my son when I needed to go to the hospital now? I don't know. And who was there for me? That's right, you. She cried. Of course she was hurt that things had turned out this way. But nothing could be changed. Well, have you thought how I will feel when you are gone and I will get all this? She asked her so-called mom. Now we'll do everything. And then when I'm gone, you can do what you want. You can sell and spend the money. You can help orphanages, sick kids, wherever you want to spend the money. Now the woman wanted to take a breath, but she took air into her lungs so sharply that she started coughing. Cindy stopped the fit. At that moment, a young woman arrived and walked into the woman's room. She did everything. What was required of her? Cindy had now been given the deed of gift, which she wasn't too happy about. It seemed to her that everyone in the neighborhood was going to say that she had lived with the woman on purpose to get the apartment. For the last year, Lucy had been on painkillers, but Cindy did everything right. She gave her shots, she gave her IVs, but most importantly, she was there for her. Cindy came home from school that day, went straight through, washed her hands, and came to the woman's room. She was lying with her eyes closed. If it wasn't for the whistling that came from her chest, you would have thought she was already gone. Open your eyes, Lucy said affectionately to Cindy. I can't, she wheezed. I'm going to give you a shot now. She did it all. Lucy exhaled immediately. Relief came. She opened her eyes, looked at the girl, smiled. Thank you. The woman was happy. Her last years had indeed passed as she had once dreamed, except now with the son. But with the daughter. I told you before, you don't have to thank me. It's all from the heart. Cindy clung to her. Cindy, goodbye. Wheezed Lucy. She put her smile back on and closed her eyes. Mommy, cried Cindy. She realized at this very moment she was alone again. Mickey entered the notary's office saying hello. What is your question? The woman sitting behind the desk asked him. You see, my mother died not so long ago. She has an apartment. I came to find out what and how to do, he explained. You want to enter the rights of inheritance. Understood the woman. Yes, he nodded. What was your mother's name? I needed to know that to find out anything. Jacob dictated his mother's first name and middle name. And what was it? He watched the specialist's movements. Lucy, she found this file. You can't do anything. It's a deed of gift. I did not understand on whom we had no one else. He got up from the table. The guy was just stunned by such a statement. He was walking down the street towards his house. He thought that Valerie had gotten everything, and if so, he was going to smoke him out of the apartment. Open up, he banged on the door. Who's that? Cindy opened the door. Who are you, his daughter? He asked him straight out. You could tell the guy was pissed. Who's his daughter and who are you? The girl was dumbfounded. The neighbor, Aunt Veronica, saw the whole thing. She called the police. They worked quickly, came, twisted, and took the man away. And then Jacob found out what had happened and was ashamed of his behavior again. When he was released, he headed to the cemetery. Before asking the neighbor where his mother was buried, he sat by her grave, looking at the picture of her as his son remembered her. Mom, forgive me. I did so many stupid things in life, he said and cried. And I also want to apologize for not admitting then that everything in the jacket was mine. He fell on his knees in front of the monument and sobbed in his voice. At that moment, it started to rain, and a leaf fell on his shoulder from a tree that was standing there. He realized his mother had forgiven him.
Thank you for watching this video to the end. Subscribe to the channel. Like it, write comments if you like the story. and see you on the channel.